Hey everyone, welcome. Robert Delgado here, and welcome to the next lesson. The head versus the heart. Some of this we have already touched on when I went through purpose, but it's so important and it's so life altering, and it's such a huge part of living not only a successful life but a fulfilling and a deeply satisfying life that I decided to create a whole lesson to make sure that the importance of this comes through. You know, by now, I always use myself as an example because I was at some point and I learned all these principles that I'm going through now, and it completely transformed my life. And this was one of the toughest for me because I was always a head guy. And although I would call myself somebody who was very open minded, I would call myself somebody that in some ways was spiritual, but really down to how I was acting day to day is I was all about the head. So what I mean by that is if I wanted to figure something out, if I wanted to make a decision, I was being guided by this part of the head. So my intelligence, my logic, I would have weigh up the pros and cons. It was based on information that I learned. So if I had to make a decision, if I had to come up against a problem, it was always like, okay, figure this out, figure this out, figure this out. Now, the problem with that is that the head is full of your limitations. It's full of all the rubbish that we accumulate over our lives, all the traumas, all the limitations, all the drama that we've been through, all these patterns that have accumulated, all the self-doubt, this inner dialogue, this monkey mind that talks to us in the back of our mind all the time. It's full of our fears. The head, remember from previous lessons, the brain is designed to look for what's wrong. The brain is designed to look for what's missing. So your head is in a state of scarcity. It's always worried about what if scenario, what could go wrong. So you can imagine if this is where you access your information, and you come up against a challenge, straight away the brain's going to go into scarcity. And you're going to sit in this what if scenario, what if, what if, what if, and what some people describe as analysis paralysis. I was the poster boy for this. I would come to a point in my life where I need to make a decision. And I would sit down and I would think about it, and I would think about it, and I would think about it. And sometimes I would take out a pen and paper and I'm trying to figure out the pros and the cons and what could go well, what could go wrong, and I try to analyze things. And because of this state of scarcity, I would come up with 100 reasons of why something wouldn't work. And I couldn't decide if I had a few decisions to make or a few ways I could go. I couldn't decide which way to go. So what would I do? I would just stay where I was. And it creates stress, and it created frustration. And then I would think to myself, okay, maybe I should just think more about it. Or maybe I should just get more information in me. Maybe that'll make it easier. And it created more stress and more frustration. And that was my entire life. Now, I heard people talking about the heart. And to be honest with you, I kind of thought it was a bit of fluff. I kind of got it, but I thought, yeah, I understand this thing. But at the end of the day, the brain and the nervous system is where it's at. With my background being a chiropractor, I mean, it was just even more ingrained because we talk about it. Your nervous system, your brain, your nervous system is the master controller of the body. So, what I've learned now is that we actually have two sources of information. The first is the educated mind, the one that I used. And that's the one we all know, that's the one we use our intelligence and our logic. But there's a second source of information. And the term you use for it doesn't really matter. If you look at human history, if you look at all the philosophies, all the religions, they often talk about the heart. But some people call it the universal mind. Some people call it your inner mind. It doesn't really matter what you call it, though. It's this other source of information. So for the purposes of this training, I'll use the term the heart. And what you need to know about this inner mind or this heart is that it's connected to our source. And again, how you understand what your source is could be different for different people. Some people call it the universe, some people call it spirit, some people call it soul, some people call it love, some people call it God. There's many names for it, and it depends on your understanding. But all I want you to know is that it is connected to our source, and it has access to all the information that ever was and all the information that ever will be. Now, just think of the implications of this. What I'm saying now is that every single person on this planet, through this heart or inner mind, has access to all the information that ever was and all the information that ever will be. Another term people often use is intuition. Why is it that you just kind of know that something's right for you? Why is it that some people have a developed intuition? We all have intuition. It's just that some people, either through luck or through development, have developed that intuition to a point where they can use it day to day. So for me, I always had intuition, but I hadn't developed a way of accessing it. And that's what I needed to do. So Socrates, a lot of people have heard of Socrates, and many others have heard of the Socratic method. So the Socratic method, obviously named after Socrates, is when you ask somebody questions. And through asking a series of questions, the person figures the problem out for themselves. And Socrates believed that everybody had the answers to every problem they ever had, because he believed in this, that we have a connection to a different source. And his technique was to ask objective questions, and then through those objective questions, you would access that point of that source of information, and you would figure out your own problems. We even see it in psychology or in coaching. It's very little talking like I am now. It's all about asking questions and allowing the person to figure it out for themselves. So let's go through a little bit of philosophy around this. Number one is we have to understand that no matter who you are, what your background is, what your education is, what your history is, we are all unique expressions of the same source. We come from the same source, and what that source is based on your understanding, but we all are from the same source, and inherently we are not broken. Now, many people that I meet and many people that I work with, deep down they think they're broken. They think that there is something wrong with them and they need to be fixed. The reality is that our authentic nature and our true nature is whole. And I think the best way of describing this is through an analogy. So I want you to think of a source. So let's think of, say, an electrical source, and then you have all these wires coming off it, and off each wire is a lamp. And think of ourselves as being the lamp. Now you get different expressions of that lamp. You get tall lamps, you get short lamps, you get different lamp shades. So they're all unique expressions. But when you turn on that electrical system and that lamp shines, the light is not coming from that lamp. The light is coming from the source. The lamp is just an expression of that source. And let's say that all the lamps have the same amount of brightness, but certain lamp shades are darker. So think about this. If you feel like you're broken, if you feel like there's something wrong with you and you need to be fixed, what's happened is, through this guy over here, your lampshade has become darker. The source is still the same, the light is still the same as everyone else, but because that lampshade is darker, it's not being revealed as much. And if you think about it, everything that I'm going through or have gone through in this course and that I will go through, the limiting beliefs, the connecting to your life purpose, all I'm doing is I'm not fixing anybody. All I'm trying to do is reveal who you already are. All I'm trying to do is to get rid of interference to who you already are. And this authentic self, or this true nature, is being abundant, is being confident, is being peaceful. And how I think about it is, let's go back let's go back to when you were younger. So you may remember from our previous trainings, I say that around about the age of 6 and 7, the conscious mind starts developing and we start, developing our limitations. But if we go a little bit younger, let's look at a 2 or a 3-year-old. What is the nature of that 2 or 3-year-old? Number one is that their default state really is being joyful most of the time. So if you look at any child from 0 to 3, most of the time they are in a joyful state. They do feel emotions. Any parent of a 3-year-old will agree. They feel anger, they feel anxiety, they feel jealousy, they feel greed, but they never indulge in those emotions. So they feel the emotion and then they move on. A 3-year-old can go from being highly angry to being joyful in just a few seconds. Why is that? Because he lives in the present moment. Every moment, he feels his emotion based on every moment, and as that moment changes, his emotions change. So there's nothing wrong with feeling those emotions, but as adults, we tend to indulge in those negative emotions rather than just move on. 3-year-olds are confident. If you ask them, who's the strongest? Me. Who's the fastest? Me. There's no issue with confidence. They have complete certainty. They make decisions. Do you want the blue toy or the red toy? I want the blue toy. There's no, let me think about it. They might change their decisions, but they make decisions. So why I bring this up is around about that age, they're way closer, if you think about it, to what our true nature is. And then as we get older, we get all these patterns programmed and developed into our brain that makes the shade darker. And then we think we're broken and we think we need to be fixed. All we need to do is remove the interference and go back to our true nature. Okay, so the heart, and when I say heart, it's more metaphorically heart. Number one is it's connected to this infinite source, which has massive implications in your life. Number two, it's connected to our true nature. So when we have the skill set to access this part of ourselves, to go to this space within, we connect it to an infinite source of information and we connect it to our true nature, which is abundant, confident, peaceful, and joyful. How's that sound? Okay, so head versus heart. Your head. It's full of your fears. It often goes into a state of scarcity. It's all about what I can get because of scarcity, and it's about competition. So it's about what can I get, and it's your thoughts, your thinking. Your heart is based on love. It's abundant, which means there's no competition. It's just about creation because the potential is infinite, and it's about giving. And I'm going to tell you a story about how profound this was for me. I was working with my coach, and I was trying to make big decisions on certain projects that I was working with. And he said to me, "You're in your head, you're in your head, you're in your head." And I was like, "Oh, there he goes again. Okay, I get it." He's like, "Okay, get out of your head, get out of your head." And I went through this strategy, which we'll discuss at the end of this training. And then he decided to actually show me what the big difference was between head and heart. And he used this example. He said, "I want you to close your eyes and think about what would your perfect birthday experience be." So I thought about it and I said, okay, well, first of all, I want to lie in bed till late, and I want my family to come in with a nice breakfast and maybe come in with some presents. And then I want to go out and I want to have, a great day with my family, and then maybe in the evening meet up with some friends, and go to like a table and there's like gifts in the corner, and all my friends come up to me and we say happy birthday, and and have a few drinks and have a good time at the party. Okay, great. So that's your perfect birthday. And then he said, okay, and we use this strategy of connecting to the heart. And he said, I want you to think of your perfect birthday again. And the I was shocked at what I thought about. My visualization came up with my perfect birthday, and it was me getting up early so I could make breakfast for my family. And then going out and having a great day with them. And then at the birthday party, the visualization came up of me taking all those gifts and giving them away to people that didn't have what I had. And when I was visualizing that, I felt this feeling of joy bubbling up. And I stopped and I looked at him and I said, "What have you done to me? Why did that change?" And he said, "The head is all about what I can get. The heart is all about what I can give." And it was like an explosion went off. It was the first time that I then realized what the real difference was, and how me being in my head most of my life and being all about what I can get, what I can get, what I can get, was one of the main, or probably the main reason of why most of my life I never really felt joy, I never really felt satisfied, I never felt truly fulfilled, because I wasn't accessing my true nature, I wasn't being abundant, and giving was not high on my priority list. So the head is all about getting and the heart is all about giving. And if you talk to anybody who has done amazing things in their life, and I mean even through things like business, they might even have done very well financially, and they are fulfilled. So people that have done really well externally and are deeply satisfied and fulfilled, if you sit down with them and you say, "What has made you successful?" 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, they will say, "I'm all about serving, I'm all about giving." So even when I start a business, my main concern is how can I make my client's life better? Which is so different. If you speak to somebody else who's struggling and you say, "What is your main concern?" They're like, "How do I make enough money to get the stuff that I want?" Or "How do I make enough money to pay the rent at the end of the month?" And that's the whole reason why they never go past that level, because they're in the head and they're not in the heart. Tony Robbins always says the secret to living is giving, and it's because he understands this. He understands that when you live by the heart and you give, you automatically get back in return. So if you want true abundance in your life, and it's counterintuitive in a way, but if you want true abundance in your life and you want to get a lot of stuff, just give a lot of stuff, because what you put out, you get straight back in. Okay, so this is not just philosophy, and there's been some amazing work done in the heart, and one of my favorites is a company called HeartMath, and they've got a team of scientists, proper hard-nosed scientists, that have been trying to study what is this thing about the heart and the head, and what is this connection between the two. And they did this incredible experiment where they hooked people up. So they hooked up their brain so they could check brain waves, and they hooked up their heart so they could look at heart activity. And they started showing them pictures, so different types of pictures, completely randomly. Some pictures were pleasing pictures, little bunny rabbits, the beach, a beautiful flower, whatever it is. Other pictures were negative pictures, a snake with its mouth open, or a car accident, or a scene from a war. And what they would do is a computer program would randomly show them pictures, and they would monitor the head and the heart to see what reaction there was. And obviously, when the person saw the negative picture, they would get a certain activity in the brain, and when they saw a positive picture, they would get a complete opposite activity of the brain. But here is the crazy thing. What they started noticing, these scientists, is that the heart reacted before the picture came up. So the heart activity would change based on the picture being positive or negative, but 2 seconds before the picture came up. So what it meant was the heart knew what picture was coming up before it came up. Now, before you think this is crazy, they redid this experiment in different areas of the world, and different scientists did it, and they got the exact same results, that the heart knew what was coming up before it came up. And the scientists that were working on it said, what we know from the study is that the heart seems to have access to information that does not follow the laws of time, space, reality. And they said, we don't know exactly where the source is, but we know there is a source. And how they defined it is that information comes first to the heart, then up to the brain, and then into the body. So the heart gets it first. So companies like HeartMath, there's a documentary called The Power of the Heart. And I would highly recommend that everybody watches that. You can go online, and as far as I know, you can rent it and you can watch it online. And they interview some of the greatest minds of our time. Everybody that's so many people that I really respect, talking about the heart. And it's in that documentary that they speak to these scientists about, the scientific basis around this philosophy that's been around basically as long as human beings have been around. So this is how I work on it. I don't want how I work at it. I don't want you to think now that I'm saying that the educated mind or the head is completely useless. And I'm going to use an analogy for this as well. The way I see it is that think your heart is the king. What I mean by that is the heart is what will make your decisions. But the king has an advisor, and that's the head. So think of this. If the king had to make a big decision, he's sitting there and he's got his advisor, and the advisor's saying, these are the pros and cons, and this is the logic behind it, but it's the king that makes the decision. So he will take in the input from the advisors, but at the end of the day, he is going to make the decision. And that is how I suggest we live our lives and how I live my life. So let me talk about this practically. I will still think of the pros and cons. I will still think of the risk. I will still think of the logic behind making any decision. But at the end of the day, I will go with what my heart and what my intuition tells me. So I live by the heart. I would say that I'm now heart-centered, but I see the head as an advisor. So should I go skydiving? Then my head will go, okay, well, you're going up on a plane that's pretty high, and the chances of your parachute not opening are, 1 in 100,000 or whatever it is, and I might think about it all logically, but my decision of whether I go skydiving will be based on my heart, not my head. Your heart is linked more to your emotions, more to your gut feels, and your head is more linked to your thoughts. Okay, so I've spoken to you about these two information sources. I've spoken about the importance of being heart-centered, and I've spoken about this being your authentic nature. So it's not a difficult process of accessing this heart. It's just about getting out of your head, and we've already touched on it. When I went through this initial training on how to find your true life's purpose, remember I said there's this missing step that people don't know about, is that they're trying to figure out what their purpose is in their head. And I touched on this process of getting out of your head and into your heart, because that is where your true wisdom lies. By the way, your heart knows what your purpose is. Your heart knows what your true desires are. So if you really want to understand what your purpose is and understand what your vision is and understand what you really want in your life, you're going to get it from the heart, because that's where it is. So how do we access the heart? So this is what I do. When I find I'm getting too much in my head and I want to make a big decision, remember, you change your physiology. We did this in state conditioning. So I get up, I literally move the body, I shake it out, I kind of confuse the nervous system a little bit, and then I start lifting my state up. So you've been practicing this now in your state conditioning of lifting that state up towards 10. So I close my eyes, I take a few deep breaths, and I start bringing that state up towards 10. I start getting out of my head. What I use as a technique for accessing the heart is when I do my deep breaths, I actually place my two hands on my heart, and it brings awareness into the body out of the mind. So I put the two hands on the heart, I close my eyes and I start breathing. And as I start breathing in and out slowly and deeply, I visualize the air that's coming into my lungs going through the chambers of my heart and then going back out. So in through the heart chambers and out through the heart chambers. What that does is it brings awareness to this part of you. It takes you out of here and brings awareness into here. Once you've done that, and you'll intuitively know, this is why it's quite difficult to explain this, because you'll just know intuitively that it feels as if you accessing somewhere different. It feels as if you're opening your heart up. Then you just ask an objective question. Whatever that question is, doesn't matter. What should I do next? Should I make this business decision or not? Should I go skydiving or not? What is the solution to this problem? What is my purpose? What is my vision? Whatever question you have, think of it as being one of those black 8 balls that you used to shake up and then the answer would come up. That is what your heart is. So you ask an objective question when you're in that state and you just listen. You just listen and you be quiet for a while. It's so rare for people to just be quiet and to listen rather than trying to figure everything out. And as you sit there and as you're listening, you will get a feeling. Some people talk about, you get a voice. I'm not so sure about hearing an actual voice. Maybe you will. But for me, it's more a feeling. You get this feeling that just guides you to the right decision. And the implications of this, of what this can do for your life, are incredible. I mean, if you're heart-centered, think about this. Number one, you've got access to unlimited wisdom. So your confidence, think about if you're going into a meeting and you know that meeting is going to be pretty stressful. There's going to be a lot of people in there. There might be some arguing and you've got to come up with a solution. Now, just before you go into that meeting, your head is going to have all these fears and go, what are you going to do? Are you going to have the answers? But if you're heart-centered, you have complete confidence because it's not about what's in your head. You have access to wisdom. You have access to a place that has all the answers that ever were and all the answers that ever will be. So you just know that it'll work out. I've had it where I've had a person that I'm working with or a client that I'm working with, and just before I start talking to them, I'm thinking, how am I going to help them with this problem? I don't really know what I'm going to ask them. I don't really know. I kind of can figure out already what they're going to answer. I don't really know what strategy I can give them. But because I'm heart-centered, I have complete faith that it will come to me. Because it's not about what's in my head, it's about this infinite source of wisdom that I have access to. So I walk in and I just have, I very often don't even know what I'm going to say. But because I have that confidence, because I have that faith, the answers just come. So the practical implications are incredible. Number two is when you're heart-centered, you're in this abundant state. And what I've said many times is that your outer reality matches your internal reality. So if you are abundant on the inside, you'll become abundant on the outside. I used to think abundance was all about how much stuff you could get. So I want to be abundant because I want lots of stuff. Abundance got nothing to do with your stuff. Abundance has got a state of being. It is a state of being. And it's true, when you're in that state of being, you automatically do get a lot of stuff. But it's the state first, not the stuff that gets you there. So when you're heart-centered, being in an abundant state becomes your default setting. You can make decisions. You know you're on the right path and you can deal with every problem. It doesn't matter what problem you face, you have this confidence that you'll have a solution. So I talk about being fulfilled. Being fulfilled does not necessarily mean that you're happy all the time. But it does mean is that you're satisfied with your life. You feel deeply satisfied. And the only way to feel deeply satisfied with your life as you go through the ups and downs is to have confidence that no matter what problem you face, you'll get the solution to. And no matter what decision you come up against, you will choose the right decision for you because you have access to this information, which means that even when things are not going so great, you still feel fulfilled because you know you're on the right path. It's really, for me, where faith comes from. Your faith that all is working out for you. All is working out for you. And that comes from being heart-centered. And you're also able to provide unlimited value. So whether that's in your relationships, whether that's in your business, it doesn't matter. The value that you can provide to other people is unlimited because you're accessing an unlimited source. So these limiting beliefs that we have, or these, the limitations that we construct in our mind simply fall away because we're not accessing things from there. We're accessing it from somewhere else. So you know that if you are doing a business with someone or you're in a relationship with someone, you know that if you are heart-centered, the value that you can give them is unlimited, and it gives you such certainty and it gives you such confidence. Okay, so let's talk about what we do daily. So now we've spoken about purpose. We've spoken about vision and goals and having that crystal clear on a piece of paper and looking at it daily. We've spoken about limiting beliefs, to how to find them and remove them. We've spoken about state conditioning. The reason why I've put things in this order is that we are practicing and we are getting better and better at lifting our state and controlling our state, because our outside reality is affected by or created by internal reality. And what we're going to do now is we're going to just carry on doing the same thing, but this time I want you to think deeper about this, accessing your true nature, and I want you to deeper start thinking about opening up your heart. And when you do your state conditioning now, I want you to put 2 hands on your heart, close your eyes and start breathing. Lift that state up like you've been doing, but visualizing the air going in and out of your heart. Visualize it and start asking yourself objective questions. Use this throughout your day. If you come up against challenges, if you come up against decisions, use this technique to get out of the head and get into the source so that you can access that information. And with time and with repetition and with daily discipline, this is why discipline is so important in a course like this, it becomes easier and easier and easier until one day there's a switch that goes off and the fog lifts and you go from being head-centered to being heart-centered. And you remove that interference and you remove that dark light shade, and the light within you starts illuminating the world around you, and other people will notice. Other people will be illuminated by you, and they will be positively affected by you. One of the greatest joys in my life was watching the people closest to me grow just by me growing. And I wasn't consciously trying to do that, but because people were around me and I was growing at such a fast level because I was so committed to all these processes, they started to grow. They started to lift their standards. They started to lift their state. And it happened automatically. So the development that you're doing for yourself right now is going to benefit the people around you, and you don't have to say or do anything to them. Your family will change, your work colleagues will change. Watch the magic happen when you do this. So that is it. Thank you for listening to me, and just keep at it, keep disciplined, and you will see your life change over time. Thank you for listening, and I will see you at the next training. Goodbye.